Welcome to Grow Milkweed Plants Podcast. Today's February 19th, 2024. My name is Brad Graham, and this is episode number 56 of the Grow Milkweed Plants Podcast. And today I'm going to go back just over 1 year to the Western Monarch Summit in California. We're going to listen to a presentation done by Boby Gendron about Asclepias. Let's give it away to Boby.
So this is showy milkweed, but this one has a special place in my heart. My friend Paul Cherubini, 30 years ago, we used to go hunting milkweed on the weekends in the summer, and he introduced me to this ecotype of milkweed, which at the time through Butterfly Encounters, I coined it as Davis showy milkweed. And what's really fascinating about this ecotype is that unlike the traditional showy milkweed that you would find up in the Sierras or higher elevations, I would try to grow those in Danville at sea level, and they would just never do that well. But this particular ecotype, you can find it in Fairfield, Davis, Vacaville, Calusa. It grows at sea level. At least from my perspective, I feel like it looks a little bit different than the traditional showy milkweed as well. So I asked my friend Mark Fishbein to try and help determine if that was the case, and he did some DNA testing on this, and it turns out it's just an ecotype, so it's not a subspecies or anything different. But my interest in this is hearing about all of the work that's going on in the Bay Area. When folks are recommending showy milkweed, this is the particular ecotype that I want to try and help figure out how we can get this plant growing in the Bay Area, because people will be a lot more successful with it. So again, just sharing experiences with you guys to show you how I got all into this. And you know, even at work today, people call me the milkweed nerd, the milkweed geek. There's all sorts of names for me. But this trip in June 2000 was a pretty special one, and we're going to go a little bit further east, so this isn't all Western species. But this journey actually started 6 years before this, when my friend Gary Stell made a photocopy of the 1954 North American species of Asclepias that Woodson wrote. And so I had 6 years of preparation, and I read that thing front to back a couple times. And so we plotted a trip, and this was before iNaturalist, so we had no records to go off of. And we were able to find 17 species and photograph 15 of them in bloom over a 5-day period. So we started out in Kansas. Chip Taylor actually helped us with some of the prairie species. That's actually his hand behind Asclepias medii right here. So we didn't get flowers, but we got pods. And then this is Asclepias sullivantii, Asclepias purpurescens, and this is Syriaca. Typically Syriaca is a little bit more of a pink and purple color, but this form was very much a white cream color. So just right here, you can already start to tell the wide variation within this genus of plants. So still in Kansas, butterfly weed. What was really cool about the yellow butterfly weed is, as a kid, when I would get the park seed catalogs, I always thought hello yellow butterfly weed was something that the nursery industry created. And when we are in western Kansas, you can actually find this yellow form everywhere. And now, like on iNaturalist, you can see records all over the place. And I think the clearest yellow I've seen is in the Panhandle in Florida. And then this is Asclepias verticillata. So then we scooted down to Oklahoma, and we didn't get Anglemoniana in bloom, but we got buds. Hirtella, no buds or blooms, and then this is Viridiflora.
What's the next one?
That's Asclepias viridiflora. Then we scooted into Texas, and we found Asclepias asperula, Asclepias oenothoroides, and Asclepias viridis. Then we made it into New Mexico, and we found Asclepias arenaria, a common name of sand milkweed. You can kind of tell from the background that it's growing in pure sand. And then, so this is Asclepias speciosa in New Mexico, and I'll never forget this one, because it's just such a beautiful color. It's almost all mauve in color, and you rarely see that in the West. And then we made it into Colorado. This is the one I really, really wanted to find because reading that Woodson's journal, it was described as almost a dwarf variety of speciosa. So those plants are only about 12 to 18 inches tall. And then we found Asclepias incarnata and Asclepias latifolia. So yeah, that was a pretty fun trip. It was 5 days, a lot of driving, but a lot of awesome milkweeds. So this is the last species I needed to photograph in the wild to be able to photograph all of the California species. And there's a fun story behind this one. So Asclepias solanawana, it grows in serpentine soils. It's mostly in Northern California. And I went hunting for this milkweed probably 20 weekends in a row, like year after year, trying to find it and could never find it. And again, this was before a lot of the data was provided online where you could go and find GPS coordinates. Someone posted a picture on Flickr, and Flickr, if you clicked on the photo, if you didn't remove the metadata, it would bring the metadata into it. It had the GPS coordinates. So I jumped up, was screaming. Couldn't wait for that, because that was in the winter, so I couldn't wait for that May. And sure enough, that's where those plants were. And I've been able to find several other patches in that area. Okay, so 2022. So what's interesting, remember I told you guys in the late 90s when I found the Californica on Mount Diablo that I remember seeing caterpillars in the March timeframe on these plants? Well, that stopped for a long time. I'm talking like 15, 20 years. I just don't remember seeing caterpillars on these plants because I would always visit them routinely every spring. And this year, 2022 was really interesting because the October in 2021, we had that huge atmospheric river that came through the Bay Area, and there was that torrential downpour. And what happened is it irrigated the land so much that the Californica broke dormancy in January, and the plants were huge and in full bloom by March. And we also had a really warm spring. So I'm not scientifically trained. This is just Bobby making an assumption and maybe a guess, but it's just really interesting to me that the weather patterns and when the monarchs leave and when this plant comes up, like all those conditions are so complex. It just seemed like this was just all of the right things working. So this is a site in Brentwood in Round Valley. I think it's called Round Valley Regional Park. And it's a really nice population of about 20 plants. And this was in March. And lo and behold, this was like the first time in about 20 years that I remember seeing a large population of monarch caterpillars on these plants. So I had this hunch that, man, we might be in for something special this year, and it looks like we have quite a few at the overwintering sites, which is awesome. And I've been working with Save Mount Diablo. They have a facility in Curry Canyon in Clayton, and so my friend Sean Burke, I helped them do some geotagging of plants. They wanted to map all of the plants on the mountain, and he sent me these photos on April 8th. So this is another Californica site that's probably about 5 miles from that Brentwood site, and they had caterpillars as well. And one of the interesting things I want to mention about helping Sean with the geotagging on Mount Diablo is they gave me this device, a GPS device, and it took about maybe like over 6 weeks. I tagged all of the plants I knew on the mountain, about 100 of them. And when I would GPS plot them, a little blue line would come up. So I asked Sean, I said, what's that blue line? He said, oh, we did a we did a project tracking all the springs on the mountain on that device. And what was really cool is, like clockwork, every single one of those plants lined up right on top of a natural spring. And so they're doing a restoration project now where through a watershed, I think they grew a couple hundred plants. So I've suggested to them, like, you've got a map now for how to do your restoration work. Like, use those underground spring lines to plant the milkweed plants along. And so we'll see how that goes. And let's see, so some final thoughts. So this is my daughter. When she was young, she's older now, she's 11, but when she was younger, she helped me a lot with the butterfly stuff. Now she's into performing arts and other things. But I just really want to make a point, just say how important it is to share our experiences with friends, family, coworkers. I can't tell you how many times at my office, right? We're selling enterprise software, and I'll start talking about monarchs and milkweed, and you'll strike an interest with someone, and they're like, "Oh, what can I do to help?" Right? And so I actually have a friend and coworker who 5 years ago, his whole backyard is filled with this Davis ecotype of showy milkweed in the San Jose area, and he's always sending me pictures of the caterpillars. Hey, what should I do about these aphids? But right, there's an example of just talking about it and someone strikes an interest and they actually did something about it. It's just nice to see that the general public seems to be very interested these days. It was much different. I remember when I was a kid calling all the nurseries in the Bay Area, and when I would ask if they would sell milkweed, they thought I was crazy to ask. Why would we sell that? So times have definitely changed. And even though I'm not doing butterfly encounters anymore, my main goal is to hopefully do stuff like this and just get people interested in milkweed, and really share my position around the importance of planting locally sourced native milkweed. Native milkweed's great. Locally sourced milkweed, I think, is even better. It's actually easier because this world spent millions of years with these plants evolving and mutating to find out that they grow perfect in your city. So if you can find that local ecotype, those plants will do really well where you live. Here, I'll give in 1 second. I'm going to jump to questions, I think. So just, if you guys want to contact me, and I think Tom said he's going to send out the PDF. But it's Bobby@milkweed.com, Asclepias Geek on Instagram, Asclepias on Twitter, and I have a group on Facebook called Asclepias, and there's about 800 of us, and if you join, you'll see it's just very, very Asclepias and milkweed focused. So that's it. Any questions?
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Boby Gendron on that presentation. Unfortunately, I don't have all the slides, and this is an audio format, so you can't see all the information we were seeing regarding his photos that he took along his adventures in Asclepias. After the presentation, I was able to go out with Bobby, and we had a slice of pizza together. I'm looking forward to the upcoming spring weather. Sometime in May, Asclepias solana Anna, which is serpentine milkweed, is going to be popping out of the serpentine soils in central Northern California, north of Santa Rosa, California. And Bobby is hopefully going to be my tour guide on that trip. So if you're listening, Bobby, this is a heads up in February that I am coming to California. Thanks for listening to Grow Milkweed Plants Podcast, episode 56. I'm your host, Brad Grimm. If it's good for the butterflies, it's good for me.